Scene 43, take one.
My name is Antonio Mendoza. I was born in Miami. My parents are Cuban. I grew up in Spain. I went to Brown University. I saw Blade Runner. I saw Eraserhead. And when I graduated from school, I came to L.A. because I really liked what Blade Runner and Eraserhead looked like. And that's pretty much why I ended up in downtown. Because I found what I was looking for. I first moved to downtown in 1985, and I moved into a loft on 12th and Crocker. We had 6 neighbors. One of them was John Miller, that does minimalist paintings. The other neighbor that became kind of famous is Tim Hawkinson. He lived there with his wife, Patty Wickman. During the riots, he made ammonia bombs in case someone broke through the door. That was our last line of defense. We never actually used the bombs. I don't think they would have been that effective. So I was living in the studio. In the bar downstairs, we found out that Richard Ramirez had hawked some of the jewelry he'd stole from the crime scenes there. At the time, I was making portraits of serial killers. So I made a giant portrait of Richard Ramirez, 12 by 12. It's the biggest painting I've ever made. Throughout the trial, I collected a lot of clippings, and I've collected other clippings of other serial killers. So I decided to make a list of the top 100 serial killers. And I put it on the internet, and that became probably the most successful thing I've ever done. And I wrote 2 books about serial killers. It was hugely successful. The first time I came to Al's bar, someone in the bar was selling acid. There was, I don't know, maybe 30 people in the bar. Everyone was tripping. Sonic Youth was playing. That night was incredible. It was a wild night. Oliver was the bartender. And she was with her friend Nancy. And we ended up going to my loft, and Oliver and Nancy came. We went up to the rooftop, we saw the sunrise, and since that night I've been friends with Oliver. I remember coming in with Oliver to visit this guy called David that I think ended up ODing here. He was all high and basically screaming, "If you guys don't have heroin, I don't want to talk to you, so leave." So we left. I visited a couple of people. One of them was this guy called Susoko, this weird guy from Africa that swallows fire. He's a fire breather. There was a party, and he did his whole fire thing. It was kind of crazy. Then he went and got some crack. Shortly after, this guy Lawrence, Susoko wants to kill me. He has some sword, and he's chasing me around and wants to chop my head off. And he was terrified, and we're time to go, I had this giant painting of Pablo Escobar that I'd made using telephones, and it was super heavy. Alberto Miyares came to my house to take it to this event, and we kind of lowered it out the window on a pulley system, and the thing slipped. Alberto nearly lost his arm. Nothing happened, but it was pretty funny. I was what a nut, this guy is an animal. So talking to Alberto, we both discovered we were Cuban. He talked to his mom, and he said he met this guy called Antonio Mendoza, and she's oh yeah, your aunt, whatever, married his uncle, whatever, So he's by the way, we're related. Alberto is the craziest person I've ever met in my life. I love him like a brother, but the most dangerous, out of control moments of my life have always involved Alberto. There was once when Alberto drove around in the flamethrower espresso rod, which was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. It was a truck with a flamethrower, and on top there was an espresso machine, and he was making espressos while it was shooting a 20-foot flame and driving around. So then that night, after all this madness happened, this guy got in Alberto's face. Started having an issue with him, and he had a dog, he had a pit bull. At a certain point, the pit bull went and bit Alberto in the arm. And Alberto swung at the guy, hit him a punch, and then the dog's butt hit him. So he got knocked down by Alberto and his dog. And the thing about Alberto that's amazing, he is on the one hand an animal, scariest human being, but then he's also very tender. He's a romantic. He could go and discharge his gun and be really scary and then come in and write a little poem, In 1994, I moved into what was called the Clubhouse. Now it's a sausage place. So wherever you come in, That was the clubhouse. And then where you eat was my studio, where I did these giant paintings. There was like a wall made out of doors that separated us. Clubhouse was very skinny. It was deep, but width-wise, it must have been 15 feet tops. It was open whenever Alberto was there. A lot of people had exhibitions. And then it had the bar from Yimmy Lou's. That used to be the oldest bar in L.A. Then there was like these different booths that I don't know exactly where he got them from. And they seemed to have been like sawed off some building, you know. So there was like a lot of shit that was like just sawed off. And then there was like an upstairs made out of like steel, rimmed around one side. And then there was like a cage in the back where all the guns and the tools were kept. As you walked in, there was like my giant painting of Pablo Escobar. And then there was just like shit stuck everywhere. It's like everywhere you looked, there was something. Everyone that came to visit me from like around the world, I would bring them there. And they'd be like, this is like the most incredible place in the world. It was, you could lose yourself looking at the walls and just the tons of shit that was like stuck in everywhere. At the time, I had just had a baby daughter. I lived up in Los Feliz and I wouldn't come to the studio every day. So one day I get a call from Alberto. And he's like, well, you know, I got bad news. I was with Steve Rice and we got drunk and we were like talking and then the shotgun came out. And we took a shot at something and it went through the door and it hit one of your paintings. So I go the next day, check out the damage. And fortunately, it was like a buckshot, so it like sprayed at the bottom of the painting. And it was a painting of like a woman with a deer head. And it was a buckshot, so it was kind of like really appropriate. So I was like, dude, don't worry, it's perfect. And later on, I showed that painting at New Space. Deer woman, oil and buckshot on canvas. And it sold. When you're making that big, it's good to have somewhere that you can show them. And it's good to move them because your friends can't buy them. I used to do these paintings that were very expressionistic, portraits of people, stuff that I was taking from newspapers. And then at a certain point, I decided like I didn't really know how to paint. So I wanted to like teach myself more how to paint. And I started copying paintings of Goya and Velázquez and El Greco. But I was like thinking I got to do them a little differently. So I'd do those paintings and put them like with animal heads or like change a little bit of the paintings. And I made them gigantic, 10 feet by 8 feet, because I had a lot of space. That's like the one thing about when you're downtown, you have a lot of space. I haven't been able to work that big since because like I've never had that space. And I was like teaching myself how to paint in a classical way. I bought a computer in 1994. I taught myself how to use Photoshop. I made a bunch of collages in Photoshop. So I got myself an AOL account. I started putting in like stuff on the internet. And then I started getting emails from people in China, in Russia, in Germany. So I was like, wow, this is like incredible. It's like before that, I would like showing my art in galleries and 40 people would show up. 20 of my friends and 20 strangers. And now thousands of people are seeing them all over the world. Once I started working on Photoshop, I made a bunch of like digital collages. So I decided, let me like go back to making physical collages. I'd also inherited a collection of magazines. So I started making these collages with them, abstract collages that felt more like paintings. Pieces of paper are kind of like brushstrokes. Pieces that as you get close, then you can start recognizing things. But from a distance, they look like more like Jackson Pollock paintings. I'll torture the collage. I'll like put a bunch of paper, tear it all out. Collage is really difficult. You don't want to repeat and repeat and repeat. So it becomes kind of like a challenge trying to figure out where to take it from there. We started Mr. Tamale, and there was 4 of us. And we were going to make a noise band. We did a couple of shows. Now it's just Alberto and myself. Alberto has played in a few bands. I'm tone deaf, and I've never played in a band. But like I know how to make noise. Alberto plays a theremin that's connected to a laptop, and I play video samples. I put in like clips from all my favorite movies. Every time I do a show, I'll do more. It's like borderline video noise. It's very like random and ordered and disordered at the same time. We used to play in a place called like Mario's Furniture, and at a certain point we knew we had like made it when everyone left the room and they locked the door. Back then the community was very different. We were isolated down here. There was no one coming and going. The riots really kind of cleared the whole area. I mean, once the riots happened, no one came downtown. And the people here looked after each other. We were all in it together. And everyone knew the neighbors, everyone knew each other, everyone knew like what the other person was doing. Everyone had seen the other person throw up. Everyone had seen the other person fuck up. Everyone seen the other person succeed. Everyone else wanted you to see their work. They wanted to see your work. And we all kind of like grew together. I think it was really nice. Now, I think it's like a different situation. The people moving into like the nice little new lofts, I don't think they're artists. If you're in real estate, the future looks good. If there's like another riot, it's going to be a disaster. You know, we'll finally have good rents again. Back then, no one had a job. We lived, you know, kind of like making shit. And I don't think that's going on anymore down here. So with all these new bars and everything, there seems to be like a new life here. But I think like what we miss is Al's Bar. Some of the funnest times in my life revolved around that place. It was truly a place where like all these artists met. We all drank together, we smoked together, we enjoyed music together, and I don't think there's anything like that down here anymore.
Cut.